And welcome back to day 33 of Survivor 50 Seasons in 50 Days. I just finished watching Millennials versus Gen X. And trust me, we're going to talk about that title. We have two people on the panel tonight. We're having another person join us a little later, but we have Nick from the Winners Edit. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. You were one of the people at the top of my list when I decided I was going, once Coach got voted out of 50 and I decided, hey, I was right in the world. These are the people that I kind of want to come on this time. You were sort of close to the top of the list, so thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Why Millennials versus Gen X?
Yeah, thank you so much for the invite. Really happy to be here. Excited to talk some Millennials versus Gen X. The truth is, this is one of my favorite seasons. I guess maybe the explanation of like why would you pick that? I know a lot of people rag on maybe like the gameplay isn't that good. The winner's strategy might not be the most interesting or the most dynamic. For me, if I'm being honest, like the strategy isn't why I come to Survivor. Like for me, it's all about, I like a good story. Over on the Winners Edit podcast, at the beginning of every episode, what we do is we don't break down like the big strategic moves. We break down like, what is the theme of this episode? And Millennials versus Gen X, sometimes at a cringy level, sometimes at a weird level, but sometimes at a really deep emotional level. It's all about the themes. It's all about the stories, the characters, the journeys they go on. You know, there's something called like the journey edit that they usually give to not the winner. David goes on like the quintessential journey edit in this episode. Hannah, and even Adam, the winner of this season goes on a journey, which doesn't happen that often. It's actually kind of rare for the winner to get a journey edit. Marianne someone, Adam someone. And to me, it's really good character work. It's really good thematic payoffs throughout the season. And as I rewatch it, it's one of those seasons that I just like more and more every time.
Yeah, for me, and we were talking about this before we went live, I think the first time I watched this, or at least going into Winners at War, Millennials vs. Gen X was top 10 for me, like by far. As the years have progressed, and so I've watched Millennials vs. Gen X probably 4 times since COVID, 3 just in a marathon type way. What I've started to realize is, because I'm not a big fan of big moves and idols and all of this, I am more invested in the stories of these characters and all of that. I do feel like this is one of those seasons where, although we do get great character work, specifically out of the people that you named, I do feel like it's very bogged down by trust clusters and voting blocks and idols and legacy advantages and all of this other stuff. And Zeke, I feel like Zeke nails it home during his jury speech, where he says, evolution of strategy. What did you do to change the game? Ken, you're a piece of shit, so I can't give you that because you play an old school game. We're not here for that. Hannah and Adam, what crazy stuff did you do this season? And that's especially the way that I watch this. I don't like that change as me personally as a fan. I don't like that change, but we'll kind of get into that as this progresses. I really want to start with the themes, the theme of the show. So also, Michael Zucker, how are we doing tonight?
Hey, how you guys doing?
We're doing well. We're doing well. We're getting right into the theme of the season. I'll go with you first then. For me, I hate the title of the season by probably bigger than HHH. Because it just comes off as cringe. Nick, you just used the word cringe. It comes off as cringe, and especially with how much they lean into it as the season progresses. What were your thoughts on the concept of Millennials versus Gen X, Zucker?
Listen, I mean, yeah, the really the 30s was like kind of like the top time of Survivor, where they just were leaning into the themes, and as ridiculous as they were, it was just a way to kind of just like get eyes on the show. Like I don't really hold much credence to it. It was cringe, whatever, but I look at it beyond that, which is just, if the cast is good, it could be whatever it wants, whatever you want to call the season. If it's a good cast, that's all I care about. And so aside from just the surface level, Millennials, Gen X, whatever you want to call it, I thought the season itself was great, and in large part because of the cast itself.
I compared this cast to Rupert. And the reason I say this is because Rupert leans into every theme of every season. He thinks he's a pirate. He thinks he's an all-star. Which, okay, yes, he's an all-star. He thinks he's like an actual superhero because he thinks the villains are like legitimate, I'm going to tie you to the railroad tracks villains. And then Redemption Island, or not Redemption Island, Blood versus Water, I am fully convinced they had Redemption Island there because they knew Rupert would step off for his wife, and we need Rupert to do that. That's funny, to quote Courtney Yates. That's funny. Here it becomes very grating by like the end when Paul sits there and says, "Oh yeah, Gen Xers, we know how to do this," and millennials are just like, because of the way I watch this, all I keep doing is calling back to Carl the dentist in Africa, saying that Gen Xers are like these horrible people because that's how far back the show goes, where a boomer can say that. My whole thing is, and the final five immunity challenge where it's not a participation trophy. I rolled my eye so hard during that because that is one of these misconceptions that, oh, we have participation trophies. It's like, one, y'all gave us those trophies back when we were growing up, but also this used to be the same exact thing that boomers used to say about Gen Xers. Nick, did you feel a type of way with how millennial, specifically as a millennial, how we were being presented, not by us saying it, but by how Gen Xers and Jeff are kind of referring to us?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess just to take a step back in defense of the theme, I really like the theme, millennials versus Gen X, and I don't care so much about if it works. And in fact, I think some of the beauty of this season is the way that the ultimate lesson is that, the winner is someone that's a millennial with Gen X qualities. And the other successful people are, David is a Gen X that's acting like a millennial. And that's why he's so successful. To me, the theme is it's a frame, and it gives them something to talk to, something to dig into, something to be proud of. I think I would sign up right now for give us the millennials versus Gen Z season. Because more than anything, I think it's a nice time capsule. I think that, like, do I agree with all of the negative depictions of millennials during, like, no, like I'm proud of my age cohort, and I think that a lot of them are off base, but I don't think they need to be true to me to be true to like what was being said at the time. And that's part of what the beauty of Survivor is to me, is that the way these, Jeff and the Gen X tribe is talking about the millennials, that's a great time capsule into like the way millennials were being talked about at the time. As I mentioned earlier, the one funny thing to me is I think Gen X gets the much weirder depiction and more dishonest one of, like, they're talking about Gen X like people talk about boomers. Like, it's Gen X is the try-hard generation that believes in putting in your work and doing things. Like, that's never been my understanding of Generation X. But it's a season about millennials is why I think they maybe missed the mark on that a little bit.
In my notes, I have Bay has entered the chat. For everyone that knows me, everyone knows that Hannah Shapiro was my Survivor crush for years until someone else came out in 46, but we'll get to her in a couple of weeks. We're also introduced to my least favorite showman / duo name of all time, Figtails. But outside of them, who were some of the people, Zucker, that those first couple of episodes that kind of resonated with you, or even in the previews going into the season, who were some of the people that kind of stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because, like, obviously I'm trying to keep my mind frame of how I was 10 years ago when the season aired, of, what my real-time reactions were and thoughts were, versus obviously with time and hindsight of what certain players came to be and all that. But I do know that at the time it was airing, Adam was like one of the guys, the players in the season who stood out for various reasons. I think just, within the first, I think it was maybe episode 4, when obviously his whole story with his mom kind of was depicted. It was just something that at the time, she was my girlfriend, now she's my wife, but we were watching together, and just something about Adam's story just really spoke to us. And we were just really rooting for him from that point on, and obviously it worked out the way it worked out. So he he stood out as a favorite of ours. And I think, later on he kind of lost steam a bunch, but early on Ken was also someone who was a very prominent player and was a very intriguing player. Again, he mentioned in the finale, he played a very old school game, very loyal game, honest game. And yeah, I mean, he had a lot of screen time in the beginning, and in terms of his dynamic with David, and how that lasted throughout the season. So yeah, I mean, those would probably be, and if I were to say maybe one more, yeah, obviously David, right? Like he became such a great force throughout the game. And I think he has something that a lot of people can relate to, which is just, kind of like an every man, just a big, strong, buff guy. He's kind of like, I'm afraid of this and that. He's kind of like almost like the man version of Suri, like I'm afraid of me. But yeah. So he really, I think, spoke to a lot of people, just everyday people who couldn't maybe picture themselves playing the show, playing in the game. And I think just obviously he became such a great force come the end. So early on, those were probably the few that really stood out to me.
Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the first time I watched it who stood out at the beginning so much, but I think those are all great shout outs. David, Michaela is someone obviously that goes on to be like a rock star in the Survivor community. Someone that when I was rewatching it over the past week in preparation to come on here that really stood out to me is I think Jay is like one of the most three-dimensional of the challenge beast provider guy archetypes that we've seen. Like he's a great character that ends up having a great story, someone that really resonated with me this time. I love that whole almost the entire millennial tribe. I think they're so dynamic. You mentioned Hannah. She's almost like where did they find her? Just amazing character for this
Max
season.
Dawson, actually. Max Dawson. What's the one?
I find the figtail. I think they serve their purpose. They serve their role. Just sort of like antagonists to be knocked down a bit. And then someone that I think maybe that it doesn't give enough to, that I think had a lot more underneath the surface, is Michelle, is someone that I think is sort of secretly hilarious and just a fascinating person that I can't quite put my finger
with
on.
her occupation. And Hannah's just like, I'm just some Jew, so I don't like if her words like I don't know what the hell this is. And that's just, I just feel like, and you are right, of the two tribes, the millennials are the ones that kind of resonate, not even because I'm a millennial, it's just they resonate because it seemed like they had these larger than life personalities. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the Gen X tribe, with the exception of David and probably Ken, were pretty two-dimensional. It's like, okay, yeah, we've got the older church lady. We've got the boomer who's pretending to be a Gen Xer. We've got Chris, who's not a lawyer. We've got we
got Brett there.
Yeah, we got Brett, who's not a cop. We've got all of these people, but that's all they are. And on the millennial side, it's just every time Zeke. Another example of I think I'm more of a Gen Xer based off of this. I don't use I like Twitter. No, I don't like Twitter, I use Twitter. Just Zeke is one of these, because we're now in the era of we're casting more super fans, and I think this is a prime example of it, of basically any season that has come afterwards. Of it's very obvious that we are playing in a cast full of super fans plus Ken and one other person. I think one or two other people are recruits, but for the most part, everyone here is, have been watching this show since they were kids. Which is why I don't know, for me, and I've talked about this already, but the influx of advantages that have been slowly sneaking in since season 21. We get the Medallion of Power, and then we get 30. We get the extra vote, or the vote duplicator, and then in 31 we get a steal a vote, and 32 we get this 30. So 33 we have the legacy advantage. We have a steal a reward advantage, which I don't believe has come back, but one of y'all can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I don't believe it's come back. Plus all the idols that keep getting put back into play. I know people love to hate on post-COVID Survivor. Oh, it's just there's too much going on. There's too many advantages, too much this, too much that. Why do you think that these seasons, these 30 seasons, kind of get a pass with all of this, Nick?
I mean, I don't think they. At the time, they weren't getting a pass. By the end of the 30s, people were saying all this, and I think the 30s are even more overpowered in terms of advantages and trinkets and whatnot than the 40s are. I think the 40s have had a lot more. Personally, I think the meta of the game has shifted more to like the subtle social player is like your optimal player now in the 40s, to the point where I actually got to the point that by the time 50 comes around, I'm like praying for like bring back like a Ben bomb, like bring back someone that's just going to do some crazy stuff just because like it's so like by the end of the 30s we wanted the savvy social play. Now in the 40s it's like, okay, bring this back. But I don't know. I think there's a grass is always greener element. I liked the 30s. I like the 40s. I don't know. Like I'm not a bit. Yeah. I like Survivor, and
exactly.
For me, it's all about like it's fun to watch the way the tides twist and turn. I do think in defense of the advantage elements of this season, I think the one cool aspect is they're there, but by and large they flop a lot. Like is there a successful idle play? Maybe there's a lot of idle plays. Most of them are misses. Even the steal or reward, which I think is actually a really good advantage that I bring that back. Absolutely. It gets used in an interesting way and not ultimately by the person that actually won it. So I think that's I enjoy that. I enjoy all the idols and advantages, sort of going off in the player's hands, not exactly working out exactly how they should, because ultimately what I think we're seeing is you have these players that are, like Zeke says, desperate to play this like strategy forward game that evolves the game, and that doesn't happen. Like they don't we have a comment here. David Idle, Jess and the Prayers. That's a great call. That's the one successful one, I guess. Yeah. But they don't evolve the game. That's the truth. Is that Adam plays he plays a solid game. He gets the win, but he doesn't evolve the game, and I think that's okay. I think that ultimately what happens is that the characters shine through, the stories, the journeys they go on shine through, despite the fact that they're all trying as hard as they can to play advanced strategy forward game.
Yeah. I do agree with you. As basically on all levels, I don't hate post-COVID Survivor like a lot of people do. I think that it's relatively different, but not really. I do feel like a lot of the qualms people have with post-COVID Survivor kind of come from these before times, and I think that's where a lot of my issues come from. Watching the way I do is like, oh, this just happened, but in 46. Someone all these people are saying, oh, I hate what's become of this show. It's like, but this just happened here. I don't hear you saying that about this. Zucker, I would say that one of the big qualms that I actually do agree with modern Survivor fans is so this is our first of many stops, or our second.
Yes.
Once we get to Fiji now, we are staying in
part of Fiji is where they're.
Yes, we are now living in Fiji because Cambodia killed all of our players in Koh Rong, and they almost killed all of our players in Cambodia. So let's come here where we're going to be evacuated 3-4 days into the game. Just for you, do you care that they are still in Fiji to this day? Like, is it something that matters to you?
Yes and no. I mean, like that was kind of just growing up watching Survivor. It's like you get to the finale and the reunion. It's like you're so excited. Where are they going next? Like that was the big pull for a lot of people, just to keep what's next season's going to be. Where's the location, the theme, all that. Like we're all kind of on the same mindset. Like at the end of the day, the game could be played anywhere, and it's going to be just as good. If money were no issue, if the budget was no issue, I'd like to see them go to some different places, but they've been at Fiji long enough where that initial feeling when they were there for maybe 4 seasons in a row, oh, I wish they'd go somewhere else. Now that it's going on almost like 20 seasons in a row, it's just kind of like whatever. So not as much an issue now as it was maybe in the first couple of years as they were there. I actually did, as I was watching the season. This is I've seen, you know, bits and pieces of the season since it had aired, but this was my first true rewatch of the season since it aired. It was really like almost like a novel experience, just like seeing kind of like the start of the, call it the Fiji era, like the start of like a new location from you know where they had been. So even though it's been the same location for almost 20 straight seasons, it was a very new feeling of just like, oh, they're in a new place, and you know, oh, they went on this reward, or they, you know, just certain aspects of the beach, just like you kind of saw things from a different lens. So it kind of gave like that, you know, kind of like novel feeling, as I said. But again, to go back to your point, does it matter that they're still there? No, it doesn't matter.
Nick, we go back to the Millennials tribe for a bit, because this is, so we have the Triforce, you know, the Duos Alliance plus Will, and Michaela is like kind of anti-Figgy, or anti-Figtails just in general. I love Michaela. Michaela's probably my favorite character on the season. And I love how antagonistic she is with the popular kids, even though she does inevitably vote with them in the Mari vote. And that's one of the things that was really compelling to me in the pre-merge, the pre-swap pre-merge, is this Millennials tribe. It kind of seems like they all dislike each other, but there is a very large majority here of people that don't like each other, specifically Michaela and everybody else. For you, what was the funniest moment like of the pre-swap Millennials tribe? Because mine is always going to be Michaela sitting there antagonizing the shit out of Figgy, because it's fun. It's fun to mess with this person.
I think for me, it's I mean, just great dynamics on that whole tribe, like you said, and just like a bunch of characters. And it's almost like a microcosm for like you're in high school or something. Like what you're really describing is like the cool kids alliance and the nerds over here. And like no one likes the cool kids, but everyone's aligning with them. And it works really well. I think the most interesting thing to me, or funniest, put it that way, is just everyone's sort of like just disbelief that Figtails is a thing. And like they're just like out there like making out on the beach and like deciding, oh, we're in such a good position, it doesn't matter. And you got Jay like, are you kidding me? Like these idiots are gonna take my game. And because it's just like it's a tribe of super fans that all know better. They all know you can't do this. It doesn't work out. At one point, Figgy makes a comment that's like, you know, we're just two people voting together. Like, yeah, that's a huge deal. That's very powerful.
That's all I need to hear.
It was interesting watching the reunion and just how much regret she has about letting that dominate her game. And you know, I'm sure the truth is like she probably had so much more to her game, but you give them that inch, and all of a sudden that's your entire edit. And I feel a little bad for her there, but you know, as Jeff said, she made her own choices. But just that duo as part of that alliance, just like being the gravitational pull that the whole tribe revolves around, really does a lot for me.
Yeah, you bring up Figgy, her boot episode at that tribal where Jeff is like, oh yeah, I could marry you guys right now. Is it love? It's like, Jeff, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? You know this is not this. You know what Taylor has back home. But okay, sure. I'm just gonna sit here and you know, say I'll marry you two people here. And I do think that Figgy, you know, in a different spot could have done a little bit better. The Mari vote, we're basically, Hannah's being told at Tribal that it's not Figgy, it's Mari. Zucker, this is one of the early moments of Hannah being neurotic, like her storyline is going from that to, you know, what she inevitably ends up as. What were your thoughts on Hannah just pre-merge, if you want to talk more about this specific tribal, fine. And then obviously, if you want to touch on this as well, her not catching a hint when Zeke and Adam are like, hey, just give us some time.
Yeah. That was probably one of
my Hannah pre-swap.
Yeah, I think you know, yeah, you could cherry pick certain moments like that where it's just, you know, so obvious to us watching. Just give them some time. They'll talk tomorrow. Like, you can have the conversation then. But I think, despite having moments throughout the early part of the game that, exemplified her anxiety and neuroticism, I really do think she did come and grow throughout the season into, kind of a more calm, assured player. Obviously it didn't translate into a final, vote, but I think just personal growth, that was kind of also the theme for a lot of players this season, just from the start to the end, just personal growth for whatever, reasons that they may have come into the game, struggling with, and just dealing with those things in the game and coming out stronger as a result. So, to focus on Hannah, yeah, I think she grew in many ways from start to finish. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say for your crush.
Nick, and we talked about this before we went live. Specifically during my Worlds Apart and my Cambodia recaps, I had, a very large panel for Worlds Apart, and then I had Phil from the Specialist for Cambodia. And in both those conversations, we kind of talked about the shift in Survivor that was happening in real time, specifically after Worlds Apart and Co Wrong, which happened, like this. We stop really portraying people as, for lack of a better phrase, shitbags on screen, and instead we start focusing more on just the characters. And I'll even go with Scott and Jason in Co Wrong, where in episode 10, right before they have their heel turn, Jason talks more about, having a daughter with autism and everything. Scott talks about more about leaving the Mormon church and his family being poor and all this other stuff. But we are now getting to an era where, for me, I love it, where we get more backstories on these players, where we learn what makes them tick. You brought up Adam earlier. We brought up Hannah. We brought up David. We brought up Ken. The things that make these people tick. I know this is another issue that some fans have with post-COVID Survivor, but for me, it's always been like, yeah, I want to know who I'm rooting for or against, not because of what the edit is telling me, but just because of what this person is telling me, in their confessionals. Nick, what do you think about this sort of shift that we're kind of getting here?
Yeah, I mean, what you're really talking about is like we're not getting like real villains anymore, and it's not even just like us being perceptive. Like Jeff has said that, and Jeff has talked recently about how that's something that he really started to move towards when he took over as executive producer after Heroes versus Villains, when he takes over. So that's really the beginning of the shift. And I haven't like sat down and done a chronology there, but I bet that's when you really start to see it, because that's when he takes the helm. And I guess Burnett was more interested in displaying the shitbags, must be what it means. I'm of two minds. Like, Jeff says he's all about like the hero's journey and telling big fantasy tales, and I think that's great. I think that's that makes for good storytelling, and most good stories have villains, or they have antagonists at least, and I don't mind like fleshing out the villain, fleshing out the antagonist, giving them more dimension. I do wish that they were a little more willing to go there in terms of like really making someone a villain, even if like not a bad person, just a more villainous at it. The flip side, and I think the thing that we just have to like call out, is that like we are in, even more so now than we were in the 30s, but certainly in the 30s as well, in a hyper online environment surrounding reality television. And like, I didn't consider Shan a villain. I thought Shan was like one of the best like characters we've gotten in the new era. Vicious online vitriol in response to just like a quasi villainous edit there. You see people all the time getting like taken down on social media just for like not voting with
Maria. Yeah, they hate Maria. Oh,
yeah.
She didn't vote this way.
That's another good one.
Clearly, we're gonna start a GoFundMe for Xander, because it's like, what are you talking? Like, what is this?
So I certainly get the instinct to want to protect these people, and I think Jeff does feel like a sense of like, these are his people that he's asking to give a lot, and no one wants to be the number one villain on the internet because of the way they're depicted on a reality show. I do think it's something that I have liked about the new era, not to stray too far away from the season we're talking about here, is that they've been more ambitious with the editing. I'd like to see them maybe be a bit more ambitious with the way they're drawing the characters, because I think there's people on this season that we just watched that could have gotten just a slight more villainous edit if they were a little more willing to go there.
Yeah, and I mean, you brought up Jay earlier. Jay is I won't say he's an outright villain this season. He's more of an anti-hero-esque because he's siding with Taylor from where I'm sitting.
He's an antagonist.
He's an antagonist to the main character storyline, and so we kind of need that. And I think that if this was pre-season 30, Jay could have gotten a worse edit, because that's kind of it goes all the way back to Worlds Apart, which we talked about a few days ago, of the reason that season is hated so much is because really of one specific episode. Even though everyone on the Worlds Apart cast, with the exception of one, has kind of said, oh yeah, it was fun out there, we're kind of surprised that our season got as much backlash as it did. It's like, well, they needed those moments to portray the eventual winner as the all-conquering hero. And I think because of the backlash that they got there, they decided, hey, we don't want this to happen again. We don't want people to hate a season like they just did this one. Let's, change it so, because we want everyone, and I do, like you said, I do think there are positives and negatives to it. I think that for the most part it is positive. I enjoy the TV villains that we get, even though they're not shown as what Scott and Jason were. I know I keep saying Scott and Jason, that's because I just did go wrong. Speaking of silly twists, Zucker, the episode, I would call it a filler episode, and it was right before the swap, where they have this one segment where they kind of fuck off to an island for 10, 15 minutes for reasons like we don't really, we're seeing tribe dynamics, but we're gonna swap, I think, the next episode.
Yeah.
Is this filler to you? Because I'll tell you, I sat on my phone during this episode.
Yeah, I mean, just knowing that for certain people like Paul that literally go home like that day or the next day, whatever, like it really had no impact on the game, because like you said, it would be one thing if it was a season that didn't swap pre-merge, that they went back to their maybe original tribes, and maybe it impacted certain decisions with certain what they thought was maybe an alliance on their original tribe, but they're kind of thinking long term, oh, I struck up a conversation with that millennial or that Gen X, maybe that'll be my inroads for going forward. It would have been interesting to kind of see them not swap. I mean, listen, I love how it panned out. I think the post-swap dynamics were great, how a person in the majority, quote unquote, went home each of the three post-swap episodes. But it would have been interesting to kind of see if that were to unfold, the whatever you want to call it, the summit, the journey, and not have them swap, to see how that may have impacted certain players' games. Knowing that they were going to swap imminently, it didn't need to happen. It was just, like you said, filler or what have you. I think it was kind of a nothing burger of a quote unquote twist.
Nick, is this the beginning version, I guess, of the summits that we're going to get post-COVID?
This is the birth of the journey. This is I think that's what they're calling them in the new era, the journey, or the summit. I think is like Australian Survivor calls them the summit. Yeah, absolutely. This is the beginning. At least they didn't have people like losing their vote there. It was fairly low stakes. You're just going to go, you're going to hang out. No one's going to have to play like a game of Russian roulette and lose their vote and get voted out later because of it.
And kind of sticking with that, I know that Brian in the chat brought up the idol play by David on Jessica, and this starts both of their end game storylines. I know one ends a lot earlier than the other, but we get David's storyline of the idol play, and then later on, Brett's like, "Oh, of course David has an idol. David always has an idol." It's like he's had 2 by this point, so okay. And then on the other end, we have Jessica, who, despite what Chris and other people are saying, they are still upset that she, flips and then gets saved a little bit later. Even though Sunday also flipped, I'm fairly certain, and she's still with the guys here. As we head into the swap, I will say that this two or three episode, until we get to the last 20 minutes of the Michaela Boot episode, I do kind of zone out. And I feel like that's the same way with a lot of these 20s and 30s swap episodes, because it does feel like, okay, there's usually a stark difference in the swap tribe dynamics. For you, is there anything in that swap portion of the game that really stands out? Not talking about the Michaela Boot just yet.
Well, I mean, it's like Zucker said, you see a lot of just interesting strategic dynamics there of like no vote goes the way it's expected. I really enjoy, you have the challenge where Michaela's like coaching the one team to get the win because she just takes it for granted that, the millennials are just going to vote out the Gen X on that tribe. Then it doesn't happen. And then they come back and Michaela's like, that's what I wanted anyway. I just good. She's like, sometimes your brain says what you're supposed to say, not what you actually want. It's like a great line. It's so funny. So I think that, like, I don't know, maybe the social dynamics aren't as electric as you might want, but all of the boots are pretty interesting strategically in terms of it's never a straightforward just vote out the minority.
Yeah. Zucker, we do have this moment where Michaela finds Jay and Will finding the idol, and we're going to talk about the Michaela boot in a second because it's going to take us a bit, because it still bothers me to this day. But when she finds them, stumble upon the idol, and she's on the dominant swap tribe here. Hannah also clocking that Brett is a cop, which is so funny because watching it this time and seeing how badly Brett is lying about being someone that works in a funeral home, is like, oh yeah, like what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Yeah, sometimes people die. For you as someone, because you're in the medical field, hoping to dox you, but like, are you the type of person, we have a lawyer and a cop this season that lie about what they do. Do you feel like from where you're sitting, so someone that is in your field, do you feel like you would have to kind of hide that? And Nick, I'm gonna ask you the same question because, but do you feel like you would have to kind of hide that?
I would say on the surface, no, just because, just knowing myself, I have a hard time keeping a straight face for an extended period of time for something that, is ultimately a lie. So to have to continue that act of, oh, I'm saying I'm this, but I'm really not, like, I just know at some point, especially under the conditions of Survivor, I'm going to slip up. And I'd rather slip up potentially over something in game than kind of set myself up for failure and bring something out of the game, and kind of shoot myself in that sense. So I would say probably not. I'm also not, like you could look at certain professions like, lawyers or cops, and maybe they have a certain connotation to them. So it's a little different, I think, if you're in one of those professions, maybe than something in the medical field. I think generally speaking, the medical field, might not have that same, quote unquote bad rap. So I think it's a little apples and oranges, but I would say, no, I probably wouldn't change or say something different from what I actually do. I just don't see in the long run a huge benefit to doing that.
Nick?
Yeah, I'm generally anti-lying about your profession. I do think cop is the one big exception for a number of reasons. Like, it's a very, like, charged profession. People have, like, big opinions on cops. Also, like, a lot of cops have been, like, very dominant at these games, between Survivor and Big Brother. A few big names come to mind, certainly. So maybe that's the one that you should be lying. But, like, I'm a lawyer, and, like, I don't know. I think a lot of times the way it comes off, at least in the edit, is people are lying about the profession because they have a misguided perception about how smart people think their profession is. Like, some of the things people lie about, I'm like, my God, you think being like a cashier is makes you smart? Like, come on. Like, I don't know. Like, if I was on Survivor, I would tell people I'm a lawyer. I don't think I would get voted out for it. Maybe I'm wrong, but you know, like, you know how many lawyers there are in the world? Like, we're not all smart. It's not us. It's not some brainiac degree, but that's my sort of baseline. I don't know. Maybe I'll go on Survivor, say I'm a lawyer, and get voted out round 1 because of it, though.
The only other big thing during the swap that I want to point out is not since Purple Jeremy and Kagayan coming out and saying that he's a model, have we seen such a revelation as when Figtails tells their tribe that they are in fact an item. And I love Jessica and Ken's reaction. It's like, yeah, no shit. It's such a fun little moment in that swap type. But we get to the inevitable Michaela Boot episode. For me, and it seems like for both of y'all, Michaela was one of these larger than life characters. I'm so glad that she was brought back the following season. It's always aggravated me, her boot in this season and her boot in next season, as far as, and 34 is more egregious because we get no reason why she's gone there. Here, it's at least portrayed as, oh, Michaela can count. We should probably not bring her along for the ride. Or Michaela's the closer because she's won challenges, except for the challenge we lost today. It felt like there was something missing. And it might, this is purely a joke, but it's like, oh, well, Will Wall is a Ronald Reagan person, but like, that's not it. It's Jay and Will kind of sit there. It's like, oh, we don't need this amount of smart at the merge, even though she's straight up saying, and they both say they trust her. They don't want to have to play with someone that is that smart. Nick, will stay with you with this for right here, but it's going to go around the horn to Zucker as well. Just from what we're seeing in the edit, do you understand the rationale for getting rid of Michaela here?
Not really. So what they say, I think the problem is there's a disconnect between what they're showing us on the beach and what they're saying in confessional. Or I guess what they're saying in confessional and what they're saying to each other when they're plotting the move. You know, they show us on the beach, she's playing with the shells, and she's basically using them to just illustrate a vote split. Like, these 3 will vote this way, these will vote this way, and we'll split the vote and we're all safe. Pretty simple. Everyone understands it. But then, you know, like they talk about the way she's talking, and they talk like she's like doing advanced calculus and using math to plot out the rest of the game. And that's what they say, that she's, you know, plotting out the rest of the game. And I could understand that coming off as really scary. Like, oh, this person already has the boot list lined up for the rest of the season. That's clearly a gifted player. Let me just go into the merge with the less gifted player, even if I don't trust them as much. That can make sense to me as a move. I'm not sure I agree with it, but it makes sense. But the problem is we don't see any of that. And I think it's actually a disservice to Michaela, because like, if she actually was such a dominant strategic player that she scared them into flipping on her, even as they say they trust her, show us just a little bit more of that. And, you know, maybe this is an example of how Survivor was starting to need the longer episodes, because, you know, if we have 5 more minutes, you know, a week to really get into Michaela, the dominant strategic player, in addition to the dynamic social character that we see, you know, that would be all the better for the edit.
Zucker, just to follow up with that, do you think that this could be revenge for Figgy? Because she is outwardly saying that she's glad that Figgy's gone, and both Jay and Will are working with her. Do you think that this is maybe even just hidden in the, you know, left on the cutting room floor? Do you think this could be revenge there?
Maybe. I mean, it's hard to say, because again, if that were the case, it just wasn't shown, so it's all hearsay. I think it was probably more what was shown. Again, it wasn't shown in full effect, but I think it was more just Michaela was portraying herself as a very knowledgeable strategic player, and perhaps, you know, spooked someone like Jay into, okay, she's proven herself in challenges. She's proving herself, obviously, strategically. I mean, listen, it's also still relatively early in the game to worry about someone like that. Like, if they're that big of a threat, they will probably get consensus agreement. Yes, they're a big threat. They need to go. So I think on one hand, it was probably too early to target someone like that, especially if the thought is, okay, we want to at least have options, have a millennial. I mean, they still had a millennial majority, but have a little bit of a bigger majority to give yourself those options to not create any kind of dissent maybe in that group. But yeah, I would say it's probably more the latter of it was Michaela's portrayal of being that strategic force than anything maybe revenge from the Figgy boot. And I do agree also, with in a way where we're kind of spoiled now with the longer episodes. So if something like that were to happen in current seasons, I think we would have kind of gotten more explanation, more reasoning behind it. It's hard when you have the shorter episodes with 3 tribes. You just have to kind of surface level sometimes touch on things. I think, and just to kind of wrap it up, I think also you could kind of say, all you want with the reasons why people, went and got Michaela out. I think there's also something to be said of, okay, everyone who's voted out should kind of realize, okay, well, why was it I got voted out? I think she realized, I maybe spoke to maybe too far ahead. And I think you have to kind of know the players you're playing with. If you're in that smaller group of players that maybe aren't as strategic or aren't as, forward thinking, not to say dumb yourself down, but maybe don't outwardly portray your whole game plan for the rest of the season. Just kind of at least go with the flow a little bit until maybe you kind of get in a bigger group setting, reunite with some people that maybe are more on your speed, like an Adam, like a David, like a Hannah, whoever. Well, Hannah was on that tribe, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I think there's some element of her, being Michaela, not kind of realizing her own powers, so to speak, and kind of doing too much with that. All she had to do was just get through that vote, and she would have had a lot more options, a lot more opportunities. So I think instead of just saying too much in that moment,
I think based off of how the show goes, she would have been taken out at some point in the merge anyway, because of what we're going to get to in a bit. This is also okay. So for years, I've always blamed Will Wall for this. It's actually Tasha did say it first, but I like Tasha, so I gotta give her a pass. And I'm not gonna say the word that he uses until it gets to the Will Wall episode, but this is one of the first moments of big moves in this season where Jay straight up just says, "Oh yeah, it would be a really big move right now to get rid of Michaela." And I think this is once again one of those moments that, for me as a fan that's been watching since Survivor Borneo, it's back then, big moves happen when they had to happen. We need something to happen. I feel like this is the worst case season as far as people are just doing things to do things because, hey, this person's now in charge. We have to get rid of them now instead of, okay, let's bide my time. Because I feel like there are at least 3 winners this season that get taken out so early because they get too big for their britches. And it's the wrong problem as well, where there are a lot of people that get too big for their britches, and then when they get knocked down a peg, it's kind of game over. But Zucker, I texted you earlier where I decided I was going to take a drink for every time the word big moves or resume was said today. And I did eventually stop because
I was going to say
a lot. Because it's said a lot.
I think you held yourself good. Yeah.
Thank you.
But the irony, though, is that it's kind of ironic, well, Adam doesn't have the big moves. Adam doesn't have the big resume, and he's the winner. And so that's why I think it works. I think if at the end, if the season was all leading up to just the person that made the most big moves wins the game, I would find that kind of, I think, more grating in the way that you do. But since it ends up not working out for any of them, I like the way it plays out and don't mind all the big move talk, because ultimately it's all for naught.
Yeah,
that's why I love the 2 of the final 3, because Ken, and we'll talk more about Ken when he becomes visible again in the season. But from Hannah and Adam's perspective, yeah, they're always a tier lower than the people that are doing it. They're the ones that are usually the deciding votes, or swaying one way or the other without actually being shown, in the forefront. And that's why that's why Millennials Gen X is still up there for me. It's because the people that are actually running the game are not the people that are trying to big brain this game, even though Hannah's the one that says the phrase trust clusters. She's basically working with the same people the entire time. This is not, there's no cluster buster, whatever Brett says, which is hilarious. Adam is shown as fallible very early in the merge. I think there's a 2 or 3 episode story arc where, for people that say, oh yeah, the winner becomes so clear in these seasons because of this, that, and the other. It's like, well, not here, because Adam is shown as, okay, he's making a big mistake with this whole Taylor thing, like telling him, hey, I've got this advantage. Taylor's laughing at him in his confessional. And we don't usually see that with eventual winners, of them being portrayed as a dunce or whatever word you kind of want to use. Nick, what did you think of the not the Adam storyline as far as like what he ultimately did and like what's going on in his personal life and all of that? Just more of a, do you feel like this is one of the times where we get a full story of a winner?
Yeah, and I think something that's crystallizing as we talk through this, I think this season maybe is the most new era of the like 30 seasons, because I think that's a door that they open really far in the new era that maybe they start to crack here. You see it again with Nick and David versus Goliath, but like so like my podcast is the Winner's Edit. Our whole thing is trying to like figure out who we think is winning based on who has the best edit in quotes. And like the traditional Winner's Edit is like the superhero, the like can do no wrong. Like you can usually tell pretty early because they're getting justified in all the moves they make. Think of it like Aubrey misplays an idol in season 50 and it gets presented as a good thing. That's how they usually edit a winner. But some seasons they're willing to really give the winner some texture and show their flaws. And I love it when they do that. Adam is a great example of, we see his ups and downs. We see him struggle. When he votes wrong, we see like they don't try to justify it. They just say like, yeah, he made a boneheaded move. When he misplays his idol, they don't like justify it as like, oh, some savvy play. They cut to him going like, oh God, I didn't need to play it. What am I doing? I think it works wonders for his story because it makes him such an unexpected winner. Like you really don't see it coming until, really it becomes his story down the home stretch. But as I said, he's going on one of these character growth journeys himself to eventually get to where he's going. And this, struggle time he has in the early merge is a big part of it.
Zucker, yeah, that's kind of the same thing. Just Adam's storyline from beginning to end, without going to big specifics, we're going to talk about a few of those moments. Can you think of a comparison edit-wise of another winner where it's like, okay, because at first I thought Mike Holloway, but even in the episode, I think that was also episode 10, with the auction, because we get the opening part of Rodney talking to everyone, flipping on Mike, it's almost okay, yeah, of course he's going to do this during the auction. It's not shown as him specifically flipping on Dan. It's like, okay, he has to do this because. Is there anyone that you can kind of see a comparison with as far as how the edit is presenting him?
Offhand, honestly, I can't think of anyone. I'm sure if I were to have the time, I'd probably think of someone or a couple of people, but it really did stand out to me, like upon rewatch, of like how, I wouldn't say focused, but just compared to a lot of other, when like you think of games like those dominant games like a Kim Spradlin or like a Tom Westman from Palau, like just like they could do no wrong and they were just like everything was like positive about them. As good as that is, as impressive that is, there's something to be said about just seeing someone, flaws and all, struggle in the game, succeed in the game, just do what they have to do and just show them as their full selves. I can't think of anyone, certainly to the degree that Adam was portrayed, that exemplified the good and the bad in their game. And I think it was a good like again, like Nick said, just like a good way of just showing, okay, like anyone can just like play this game and win this game. Like you don't have to play a perfect game. There's no such thing as playing, like there's no one recipe, there's no one formula to play this game and win this game. If there were, it would frankly be, it would still be an exciting show. Don't get me wrong, but it would be somewhat boring. Like you need to have different. Again, that's why you have different people playing, because anyone can win. Old, young, male, female, whatever. Like anyone can play and win this game. So I can't think of another season or another winner that kind of represented that as Adam did.
Marianne would be the one I would throw out there. I think Marianne, when Marianne was winning, I compared her a lot to Adam's win in terms of flaws and all. Like a lot of Marianne's edit is like the rest of her tribe calling her a weirdo, and like we don't respect her, we don't trust her. So I think she's the best 1-to-1 to Adam's edit if you're really looking for one.
And
maybe
I would say
even Aubrey. I was gonna say maybe even just Aubrey, who just played in 50. Like, it wasn't necessarily like in her 50 game represented. Like, I mean, there were touches of her, being on the bottom and her having her, kind of idiosyncrasies, but it certainly was shown in her previous seasons. Some of those other aspects. So if you look at it as like a whole picture, Aubrey also has had that kind of trajectory of. First season started, play, I mean, initially had a rough going, but ultimately made it to the final tribal and finished runner up. And she had a very good showing in Korong and did fairly well, not as good, but still a pretty good game changers game. And, kind of got punched in the face a little bit in Edge of Extinction. So she kind of had that like up and down type trajectory that in a way Adam did, where, I mean, he also had he was on the bottom after the first vote, but kind of, gained a little momentum come merge. Then he kind of made some mistakes with Taylor and kind of trusting the wrong people, but then he gained steam at the end. So it was a roller coaster kind of game. So in a way, Aubrey kind of has had like a roller coaster Survivor career.
My comparison, because of how I do this, it was Jenna Maraska. It was Jenna Maraska of just like she's the wicked stepsister. She's doing all, and she ends up on the bottom once during the rob of it all, and is thinking about quitting the game, and then goes on a 2 or 3, I think 2 immunity run, and ultimately puts herself in the great spot to win the game. But we're seeing all of it, and that's a different, because we're being shown on screen. Because I have to imagine all these winners are doing stupid or whatever the case is out there. The fact that we're being shown this, I think, is very important. And I think that everyone, both the people you named and Jenna, are examples of, give us this. Let's get the whole story. We don't need every season's winner to at least be shown to us as a steamroll. It'd be cool to see people that are like us. We want to be shown on screen.
I just want to real quick. Jenna's a great call out because Jenna is the reason that the winner's edit gets born. Among like the Survivor superfan communities, the Amazon's like a very like beloved season. It births Rob, who births an entire Survivor community. But among the general audience, the Amazon was actually very disliked. Jenna was very, very poorly received as a winner, to the point where it then basically until Adam, we go on this, almost 30 season run of these pristinely edited winners, because there was so much backlash to the way she was edited, and people didn't see her as a deserving winner. They didn't root for her. She was very negatively portrayed. So that's a great call out to go all the way back to her, because the winner's edit is birthed as a response to her.
Sure. Stephen Fishback brings up during Cambodia, I think during his jury speech, there's an evolution in the game. The tide is turning. Now it's all about big moves and idols and all of this other stuff. We get trust clusters this season, which is basically the same thing. And my notes just have fucking trust clusters. Even though Hannah Shapiro is my Survivor crush, every time I hear the phrase trust clusters, it's like, okay, please don't do that. This evolution in the game of big move, big move, big move. Well, I'll do an around the horn question for this too. Nick, do you feel like this was inevitable?
Yeah, because to me, I personally don't see Survivor as linearly evolving so much as a pendulum swinging back and forth. And there have been times throughout the history where there's lots of big moves, even before the 30s. But I think we definitely enter this phase, and it's usually a backlash to something. I think what you can probably most point to And I don't know timeline wise if they would have seen it, but when I think of the late 30s is the big moves era, I think of it as a response to Go Wrong, a response to the superfan community is upset because the person that made the biggest moves did not win. So now, and the edit went out of its way to portray the fact that the person that made those big moves didn't win. And that creates a meta of people focusing more on resume, for example. Later on, I think it's going to shift back in large part in response to Ben, who superfans found grating, and then Chris, who had the big resume, but wasn't actually in the game very much, and that annoyed a lot of people that he won. So I think it's usually, to me, the way I see it, is not so much like this is the next progression as much as something big happens that affects especially now that we're in this super fan casting era, that like they're all seeing the seasons. It's all affecting their meta. There's, there's the RHAP space where everyone's on Twitter and conversation with each other. And so when you have something like Aubrey losing to Michelle and the backlash around that, I think that inevitably is going to cause a more resume. I think resume is probably the best word, a more resume forward game throughout the rest of the 30s.
And we'll get to resumes in a bit during our Will section. Zucker, how about you? Just and I think Nick described it very well. But like for you, as you're watching it in real time, are you enjoying where the show is? Even if it's a pendulum, are you enjoying that the show is shifting this way during this time period?
Yeah, I think that there is a natural evolution to the game, just from the standpoint of, new strategies come, people watch and learn from previous seasons, previous players. So there will always be, I think, an element of thought of, okay, I need to do more. I need to build off of what was previous to me. I think within the game, there are also certain aspects that, may induce, that kind of gameplay in the players. I think the 30s, especially the early 30s, kind of like that sweet spot, if you want to call it that, where, all right, there was some idols, there was, a couple of advantages, an extra vote here or steal a vote there, enough to kind of help instigate that, like, quote unquote, big move mindset. But then I think we're kind of seeing in real time, when there's too much going around, too much in-game chaos of unknown uncertainties, it kind of creates a more conservative kind of like wanting to play it safe gameplay. So I think there's some element of the 30s in a way had it kind of right, where if you're a fan of the big moves, there wasn't as much going on to cause the players to maybe be a little more conservative in their gameplay. So I'm not so much like harping on it versus just like noticing maybe like the in-game, the kind of production reasons why that happens. I think I kind of got a little off topic there too.
No. I just want to kind of wrap up that portion. Yeah. I've been saying since Worlds Apart, we're on a crash course to game changers. Like every season Worlds Apart on, we're getting more and more advantages and big moves heavy. And Jeff is saying, yeah, like big moves. We got to get big moves. Got to do big moves. And then it's all leads up to that final 6 at Game Changers, where it kind of just comes collapsing, because this is, when people say, "Oh, the show is rigged for the favorites to win," it's like, really, why didn't Sari win Game Changers then? If it's so rigged, right? How does she end up in the spot? Why would they not do something? That's just that part of the crazy fan base. But I think that after that, it's like, okay, they probably should have sat there and been like, okay, what are we actually doing? Because we get the Super Idol back for one episode in HHH, which I always forget, and I'm glad I remembered it now, so when I watch it Saturday, it's not a surprise to me. But we get the Super Idol back in HHH. We still get other twists in Ghost Island and forward. It's like, did you guys not learn from one of your favorite players getting auto-elimed? Zucker, throwback to when I got auto-elimed in All-Stars many moons ago. I don't want to turn this into a Hannah Shapiro simp fest, but I just want to quickly point out the fact that this time around, and the last time I did this, it is it's almost shocking how much she is doing on screen, specifically going into the the rock draw tribal, she's the one saying, yeah, we should probably do Zeke. Like we should probably make the Zeke thing happen. And I don't remember who was I don't know who was saying we should go somewhere else, but she's trying to say, let's do the Zeke thing. And I know that I'm going to catch the votes on the other end. And I'm fine with that because as long as David plays his idol for me, everything's hunky-dory. And this is where Sunday's moment happens, where she basically throws everything off. And I think it's a great moment. We get rocks for the third time. Now, I said this during Blood versus Water. My favorite will always be Marquesas because I don't like Pascal. And then Blood versus Water, it's fun because, what the game dynamic was here. This one, I'm going to be honest, I cry every single time. I feel so horrible for Jessica because they're dwelling on her throughout this entire tribal of like, if you don't know what's going to happen, something bad's going to happen to her. Because we keep showing her, and Hannah's saying, "Please don't do this. I think I'm gonna go home. I think Jessica's gonna flip." Jessica's saying, "I don't want to go to rocks." Adam's face when she gets rocked out, he's shaking his head. And fucking Brett, it's like it's David's fault. It's David's fault.
Yep.
David wanted to do this. Nick, this is I love rocks. Rocks to me is something that I wish would have happened a lot more, especially in the 40s. To the point where anytime it almost happens, like, holy shit, we're actually gonna get it. What are your thoughts on rocks as a tiebreaker, concept, whatever you want to call it? But also, what did you think of this tribal as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great device. I wish it happened more often. It's interesting, but I think it's also special that it's fairly rare. I think if all of a sudden we were going to rocks every other season, it wouldn't feel so special. So probably good that it stays somewhat rare. This is like part of like the masterful storytelling of this season that like Jessica's not in the top 5 most important characters. She's not particularly captivating, at times she's maybe even a little boring on the beach. Like she's fine. She's there. She's like a second, third tier character. And she's not someone that has like big emotional resonance throughout the season either. She's like what you described earlier as like sort of the Gen Xers that are just sort of there. But my God, I feel so bad for her when she gets rocked out. They do something right to make it just such an emotional punch. And this is going to sound bad. It's going to sound like I'm saying that I like watching girls cry. But when she gets rocked out and is just devastated, that's beautiful. That's like such a great moment. And like, if I'm going to have an overarching critique of like more modern Survivor, like way too many good sports. Like good game, you got me, you backstabbed me, oh you guys, haha. Like I'm okay with some people eating good sports, but like I don't know, like if you deprive me of $1 million, I want people to be mad and upset about it. And she is seeing her dreams get crushed here, and you just feel it. Like when she's just like, if I had just voted differently, I'd still be in the game. And I low-key hate that by the reunion she's like, oh, it was the right move. No, I like it when she's on the beach bawling her eyes out because she just saw her dreams evaporate, and that's horrible. It's like when a movie makes you cry, it means they did something good. They made you feel something, and man, they deliver an emotional punch here, and I think it's a masterpiece.
Zucker, before I get to you, have either one of you seen the movie The Mist?
Yeah.
No, I have. No.
So I don't know why, but the ending of Jess here, it reminds me of the ending of The Mist, including her saying it was, well, not even including her saying it was the right move, but like, it just, I don't know why I get Mist vibes from this. And Zucker, just look up the ending to The Mist and it'll break your heart. But that's just knowing when you watch that, that's what I think about when Jess gets rocked out. For you, what do you think of a rock draw? I mean, do you think that if this situation would ever come up again, do you think that they might actually change it? Because we haven't seen rocks since 33, which is, by my math, it's still not as long between 4 and 27, or obviously 27 and 33. Do you think this is something that's going to be a dynamic still in the event we ever get to a stalemate like this?
Yeah, I mean, there's always that possibility. Again, because it has been so rare, it's only come up 3 times in the first 50 seasons of the show. The odds of it coming in some point in the near future might not be, but I think it's always intriguing. It's always interesting that that's an element of the game that the players have to navigate around. I think just knowing how the game is now, where it's a lot less likely for there to be, like there was at the final 10 of the season, kind of two warring factions like that are just not budging. I think it's a lot more difficult in today's game to have that kind of, call it rigidity or, steadfast alliances, because yeah, people don't want to be the Jessica and have their dreams crushed, for just picking the wrong rock. But I think just inherently the game is a lot more fluid and alliances are a lot more shifting, that to create a situation to even lead to that possibility of not just on the first vote, but then on the revote, have it be a tie. I think there's just a lot of what ifs that in today's game, it's very difficult to see happen in that way.
Well, what's crazy about it happening here is, so in more cases, it makes sense. It's season 4. You stick with the people that you know, and at that final 4, it's 3 people against Sepia, and once again, I don't like Pascal. And season 27, it is 3 versus 3. Sierra realizes it's 3 versus 3, but like she just joined this new alliance. Here in 33, we've already been shown that people aren't really sticking to alliances. It's just day by day, we're just kind of doing our own thing. And so I think what's so surprising about it happening here is these people aren't actually working together long term, because in the very next round, Will wants to get rid of the person he just went to rocks for the previous night, which I do think adds more, like, as you watch as a whole, makes it more compelling, because it's like, wow, that's crazy that you are immediately flipping on the person that you were willing to just take your. Oh no, was he immune there? No, he wasn't immune there. You were willing to take yourself out of the game for yesterday. Now it's, I need to get rid of him, which leads us to one of my least favorite words in Survivor. A word, like I said, that Tasha said, but because I like Tasha, I'll give her a pass. Will Wall decides he needs a resume. If he wants to win the game, you gotta have a resume and you have to have big moves, because if you don't do that, then it's impossible for you to win. It's never happened before in the history of the show where someone just kind of went up there and said some things and won the game, a la Chris Doherty or Todd. But Will Wall thinks, I need to do this now, because if I don't, I would rather go out in a blaze of glory now than been dragged to the end. It's like, really? Because I think I would rather just go to the end and just take my chances with the jury. Nick, thoughts on resume as a concept, but also specifically here, do you think that Will have the right idea in the bubble of this season of, because inevitably we're going to get a final 3 that doesn't have the best, like you said, but do you feel like this is kind of what the perception is at this point in the game?
Well, let me first just make something clear. Will Wall, 18 years old in 2016 was his film. We do not claim him as a millennial. He is firmly Gen Z, and let's just make sure we don't include him in our club here. But I actually really enjoyed on this rewatch Will's little mini arc he goes on, and obviously it ends up being wrong in the end. Like the people with the resumes don't win the game. But it's fascinating, he goes to rocks for people, then he's flipping on them the next week, and then he ends up making like Will's big move when he flips on the people that he just he ends up being, he changes the entire trajectory of the season. It's Adam, David, Ken, and you mentioned the alliances aren't that rigid, but that foursome, Adam, David, Ken, and Hannah, they stick together, and they're about to get just like pagonged out of the game until Will flips, and that's his big moment. We're probably talking about like the J, or I don't know, maybe Brett wins the game. I don't know, totally different season. But and then the week after his big move, they vote him out almost unanimously. The only person voting with him as he goes out is Jay, who he just flipped on the previous episode. So I think it's a fascinating little mini arc of this, like, the youngest kid out there, the one that's not even a millennial, just like wants to make a name for himself. And that's one of the tall tale signs someone's not winning Survivor. Anytime someone starts talking about, like, I'm here to make a name for myself, I want to make sure people remember me. Well, people remember you now, Will, but you didn't win the game.
Will Wall, and this is not an exaggeration, if you don't count problematic people on the show, Will Wall is my least favorite person of all time, literally because of resumes. That is, like, I'm sure he's a sweet kid. Oh, he's not even a kid anymore, but I'm sure he's a sweet guy in real life and all of that. The only non-problematic person I've ever had an issue with is Will Wall because of resumes, because of how much it seeps into the rest of the 30s and even sort of the early 40s. And it's just like, you guys are just, and even in the, for people in the org/LRG community, it's seeped into there as well, where people just come into these games thinking, I have to do all of this because Will Wall once said resume, and now I have to have this. Like, that's not true. Just go watch the show. Trust me on this. This is not what makes a good winner. Zucker, the other part of the Will Wall episode, is what I have in my notes, the prototype of Mike Turner and or Joe. The honesty, integrity of Ken basically putting Will through some weird test. And this is actually where Ken reappears after going to bumfuck Egypt for like 4 episodes. He just magically reappears here to test Will's whatever. He's putting Will through this weird test, and we have the classic Adam Klein, like, that's a betrayal, moron. That's a betrayal. Thoughts on Ken in this endgame, especially because he's not here for most of it and appears and does pulls this crazy stunt.
Yeah, I think that if I were as a viewer, I think it's interesting because, again, it would not make a very exciting show if everyone played the game like a David, like an Adam, just very like doing the right moves based off of what's happening in the game. It creates an interesting dynamic when you throw a Ken in there, when you throw someone who is playing more emotionally, playing more less logic, more, again, just based off how they're feeling. Because a lot of those players that are playing strategically have a hard time playing with those types of players. So as a viewer, I think it's a great element to the game having that contrast. If I were a player in the game, I would think it was the most frustrating thing in the world because you're trying to do the right thing and this person is just getting in your way each time. So I look at it contrasting in terms of that. But yeah, I feel for Will because, and you can say all you want about the big moves and the resume and all that, but if you're Will, you're doing what you need to do to make that move, and then you get someone like Ken who's just fucking up your game and just basically just destroying it to pieces. So I feel for him in that sense. But I think, you need someone like a Ken or just someone who's, maybe a fan of the show, but just is still going to do maybe what they feel versus what they, logically would need to do.
And I'm so glad you used that word. So, Nick, you brought up earlier, in a world where Brett wins. This time around, Brett was so much my proxy of just getting so frustrated with all these people for doing all this. Why can't we just do this? Why does everyone keep doing all this craziness? And you can tell how frustrated he gets towards the end at these tribals of any of his confessionals, where it's like, I can't trust anything that any of these people are doing because they're going against, like, why is David still here? Hey, why is David still here? Hey, why is David still here? Brett is the only logical person left at 7. And I know that's an exaggeration, but also because, and as much as I understand why Hannah gets rid of Sunday here, because it is, once again, it's Hannah that says, hey, we need to get rid of Sunday. She feels like Sunday is taking up a spot at the end of the game. We have seen this move happen in the past of, hey, if nobody wants to sit, it's the Courtney vote out in Panama. We we start getting into this end game, and Jay is still there, and David is still there, and those are probably the two odds-on favorites to kind of win the game at this point. What I kind of want to talk about here is, this is like the fourth day in a row that I said I hate doing what ifs, but somehow I keep ending up doing what ifs. Nick, for you, how do you navigate this final six?
So I want to talk about the Sunday move that you mentioned, because I have a maybe it's a controversial take, I don't know, but is it Panama when the idea first gets introduced of take out the GOAT because they're taking up a spot?
Yeah,
I think that did irreparable harm to the way a lot of people play Survivor, because I think it's usually the wrong move. I think if you're a Suri, if you're a Tony, if you're a someone that beats anyone, yeah, that's a great move. Take out the GOAT because you don't need them. But we see so many times these people like Hannah that don't have winning combinations. They have very few of them, and they're just inextricably taking out people that they could maybe beat. I don't know if she could beat Sunday. I think there's a decent chance she could have. And by doing so, they're just foreclosing winning combinations for themselves at the end. And we just watched season 50. Jonathan's on this warp tour in the exit press, asking everyone that wants to interview him what he could have done differently. Well, what he could have done differently is not voted out people he could have beaten, at the final 7, at the final 6. He's taken out people that he actually has a shot against. So I think that's actually been like a very poor strategic meta that's existed for quite a while in Survivor, because it's a good move for the person at the top, not so good for the person that needs a specific combination at the end to get the win. How would I navigate that? I mean, it all depends on who you are. There's very different combinations for everyone, but I think it ends up working out well for Adam, who really correctly identifies the idea of these are the threats that I can't beat. These are the people I can beat. Let me just make sure I'm at the end with the right people. And I think that's why it's really hard to say, how would I navigate? I don't know. Am I a threat, or am I a person that needs to sit there with two goats? I don't know.
Zucker, Jay uses, so we have the moment where Adam basically gives his Stila reward to Jay. Jay basically returns the favor after David wins the final 6 reward challenge, immunity challenge. I think it was immunity and reward, whatever. And Jay uses that advantage, takes David and Adam anyway on the reward because he knows that this time is sort of up. In the middle of all of this, he does in fact find the fake immunity idol that David has planted. One of probably my favorite fake idol being played moment of him realizing in real time what has just happened. And Nick, you brought up earlier about sometimes it's better to watch people be upset. I think Jay is one of the examples of the opposite of that. Like, I love watching Jay just be like, you guys got me. Like, it was great TV, especially coming off of the Jessica vote a couple of episodes before, or the Rock Drop for a couple of episodes beforehand. Zucker, for you, this end game, because this end game, I understand Brett's frustrations. I understand Adam's frustrations. I understand why Hannah is doing what she's doing. Everyone's thought processes in this finale, especially, it all makes sense. And Jeff says during the reunion, there is no front runner, at least from an audience. For me, definitely, I didn't see anyone as the front runner of person is clearly going to win the game. We're being told it's going to be Jay or David, but from what I'm seeing, it could realistically be any of these 6. For you, going into it either the first time or as you watched this week, did you think that you did a good job of kind of hiding what was inevitably going to happen?
Yeah, I think so. I think, just in large part, as we've established, Adam's not maybe your stereotypical winner. You didn't get like the quote unquote winner's edit. It didn't become apparent, I would say even until the finale, again, because you still had potentially, Jay gets to the end, if David gets to the end, versus any of the other 3, arguably, that do wind up in the final 3, they win. So I don't think it became very apparent that Adam was going to win until probably during Final Tribal. Yeah, you could look at it in hindsight and, look at, maybe how much exposure he had, if you count confessionals and this and that, it makes sense why he was the winner. But I think just everything within his edit doesn't necessarily speak to him being the winner until later on. What was the other part of the question? Sorry.
No, I think you covered it.
Okay, yeah. So there you go.
Yeah. Quickly, I want to point out, and this is the last time I'll bring up Millennials versus Gen X, as a concept. Not a participation trophy. I have in my notes. It says not a participation trophy. Fuck right off. Because once again, it's like, why is this? We've gotten past Millennials versus Gen X at this point. This game has been about trust clusters and voting blocks. We're no longer, this stuff does not matter anymore. But of course, we have to get a call back here of participation trophies because Millennials, they where I think, for me personally, watching it this time, where I think Hannah loses the game, and we can kind of, is the fact that she doesn't get rid of David when she could have gotten rid of David. I think that if she does do that, then it very much is, I've gotten rid of, when she says she's gotten rid of everyone, she's telling the truth. I think it's the order that people kind of cared about because of the threats that just kind of linger throughout the game, and that kind of turn people on, I won't say bitter because it doesn't seem like these people are overly angry or anything. I guess where my question is going to come from here is Final Tribal Council. So this is the final time. David goes out at 4. He's great. David goes out at 4. This is our last time getting traditional Final Tribal Council with questions. We're going to get our panel starting tomorrow. But this is also, we don't get overly, at least shown on screen, we don't get overly pissy jurors until maybe 41 with Shan. Once again, it's just kind of this change in the edit of, we're only going to show these good things happening here. What I don't like, and this is a fallacy in certain fans' heads, and I hate it, it's the Jeremy Collins, Adam Klein fallacy of, they only voted for them because they had this moment at Final Tribal Council. And it's like, that's such it's very dumb to say, and I can use that word, but it's very dumb to say. But also, have you not paid attention to the first 13 episodes of this season? Do you really think that all these people just kind of came in and was like, you know what? He cried, so we're going to, he's having a baby, or his mom is dying. Because there have been other situations where people have had other stories like that haven't gotten all of the votes. Nick, where do you kind of sit on this? I call it a misconception, but maybe you have a differing opinion of why these fans just kind of put this on them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why the fans put that on them. It's obviously not true in this case. Did you watch this Final Tribal Council? You have, before he says anything about his mom, you have Chris stumping for it, who he has no relationship with, just getting up and saying, we got to vote for Adam. Jay's obviously voting for him. They're brothers at this point. It's clear long before he says anything about his mom that he's pretty obviously winning this. Did it get him a vote? I don't know, maybe, but I don't think there's any way that that's the sole reason that he ends up winning it. But it does make for a very nice story, and to me, ultimately, him and his relationship to his mom and his relationship that develops out of that with Jay is really the lifeblood of the season. So makes for a nice character moment. And I don't know, I think if you talk to your more casual fans, they're probably loving all of that. And it's just the maybe too hyper online Reddit type fans that are all up in arms about the.
Always stay away from Survivor Reddit. It's a cesspool full of horrible people. We are also now joined by Survivor alum Jake. Jake, thank you so much for hopping on right quick. Zucker, before I get to you, Jake, I do want to kind of get your opinion on Millennials versus Gen X. Did you watch it live? What were your opinions on it? Has it kind of changed throughout the years?
No, honestly, buddy, I didn't. I just wanted to jump in. I was watching you guys' podcast for it, say hello, see how you guys are doing. Love the content. But yeah, no, it's I think Survivor in a whole is getting better and better and better. And yeah, what do you think about my season? I know you're not doing my season right now, but
I'll be getting to your season in 2 weeks. So what this is? So do you know what this is?
nobody. Honestly, literally, I was watching the hockey game and I was scrolling through my YouTube and I saw you guys come up and I was just kind of.
So, I'm watching all 50 seasons in 50 days. So today is day 33 of my rewatch. I won't be getting to your season for 2.5 weeks. Yeah, but I mean, I do enjoy your season. We've all kind of talked about how post-COVID Survivor has kind of gotten a bad rap, and it kind of seems like we're all on the same page of you guys take a lot of shit for stuff that's out of your control, and you still provide for. So we do appreciate you for that, and I feel like I can speak for the panel for saying that.
Yeah, well, I jumped into the end of your conversation when we were talking about Reddit and how negative everything is, and you're exactly right, man. I've had 90% negativity, 10% positivity after the show is done, right? So it fucks you up a little bit, but at the end of the day, I don't care what people say, man. I played a game, I had a good time, and I guess we'll see what happens in the future, right?
I mean, is that? I hope so. I hope we get you back. Any final thoughts before you head out?
No, guys. Also, honestly, I just wanted to jump on and just thank you guys for being fans and doing these podcasts, man. It means a lot, and I enjoy your perspective on things, and it was just kind of cool to listen to you guys for a bit. So I didn't mean to jump in for long. I just wanted to say hello real quick.
Who won the game? I can't watch it while we record. Who ended up winning?
Who won what?
Who ended up winning the hockey game?
You're breaking up, man. Say that again.
Who ended up winning the hockey game?
Oh, tonight? Carolina.
Carolina won. Okay.
Yeah, so they're one win away from the cup.
So
brutal.
Anyways, boys, I'll let you go. Sorry to pop in. Thanks for the support.
Thanks, Jake.
Have a nice one. Michael Zucker, why do we hate the fandom? No. It's very similar to Second Chances as far as, even though Jeremy sweeps, I feel like Tasha does a really good job at Final Tribal. And then Spencer, it just kind of seems like the jury's not going to give him a chance. It's the same thing with here, where it does feel like Hannah and Adam are kind of going back and forth, and the jury's not really giving Ken a chance. And I understand, because he's honesty, integrity, all of that. Although Jess does say, "Hey, I can't believe you voted out David. That's crazy." It's like, really? Because I get that one. Based off of your watch today, not deserve, that's whatever. What did you think of Hannah's Final Tribal performance here?
Yeah, I mean, obviously not, maybe as strong or effective as the winner Adams, but I think it certainly was at least, just based off performance, warranting at least a couple of votes. Like, I think that she was very effective in portraying her game, why she made certain moves, when she made certain moves. I'm sure there was, again, a lot that we aren't privy to regarding relationships, regarding, what was said, not in the, shown aspect of the show, as to why ultimately some people didn't go for her. But I think, she had a Final Tribal performance that was very well representative of the game she played, and again, like, why she did what she did. So again, just unfortunately didn't translate into the votes for her.
Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I think that ultimately Adam just gave a really all-time Final Tribal Council performance. I think he did a phenomenal job of painting himself as, people love a Goldilocks. And I think that very often in the final three format, you see the person that can set themselves up as the Goldilocks between two extremes does well. And he really runs with that idea at Final Tribal Council of saying, Ken was too loyal, Hannah was too erratic, I was just right in the middle. And I don't see it so much as dismissive of her as much as although fans may not respect his game all that much, I think the people out there really wanted to give the win to Adam.
Yeah, I like this. Two of the three, like I said, and that's not a knock on Ken. It just felt like it was the Adam versus Hannah show, and I don't think it's a knock on her. And also, yeah, the fandom is, once again, it's even if they don't bring up the whole mom thing, they still give Adam shit for whatever. And it's like, okay, as always, the fandom has kind of gone down the Star Wars fan path of they just can't like things. They have to hate, and it's so funny watching this specifically today, because one thing that all survivors, you know who I'm talking about, the fandom hates Jeff, and anything that Jeff likes, we have to dislike. Oh, Jeff likes Rick Devens. Well, we have to hate Rick Devens. Oh, Jeff likes this. Oh, we have to hate this. The one thing that Jeff loves that the fandom still gets addicted to, like crack to this day, are the big moves, the resumes, and all of that. They'll eat that up, but they won't eat up everything else that and it's just a fun little. All right, so we do eventually get Adam winning in a unanimous vote. We get our tease for game changers. Oh boy. Sierra voted out her mom, which Jeff once again brings up. She voted for unanimously, but we kind of forget that. We learned that Adam's mom did die shortly after he got back home, and that kind of wraps up Survivor Millennials versus Gen X. Final thoughts on the season before I get to our final question.
Yeah, for me, like we didn't really touch on it much, but like I said, the lifeblood of this season for me really is this Jay and Adam relationship. I think that this enemies to friends to respected vote out trajectory that they go on is one of the better like complex duos that we've seen in Survivor, especially if you're talking like in the 30s and in the new era. The way they can take these two that are really at each other's throats, and eventually they're like crying to each other and then sad as they vote each other out, and then they end up living together after the season's over. They move in together in LA. Just really beautiful. I think there was a time in my Survivor fandom when I was much more into like the seasons with the biggest moves and like with the most complex, cool strategy are the ones I like the best. And now I don't know, like I'm a dad and I'm getting like kind of old and sappy, and like this is the stuff that like makes Survivor for me. Like seeing like two guys like learn to love each other and like bro out, like it's awesome. And so that, when I think about the season going forward, is really what it's going to come back to for me, is just this awesome relationship that's born out of tragedy.
Zucker?
Yeah, to bounce off that, I think the season kind of, if you look at it in a way, how Adam portrayed himself at Final Tribal, he wasn't too rigid, too, unflappable. He wasn't so chaotic and so, just ever moving. He was just right in the middle. I feel like this season was also kind of right in the middle in terms of not being maybe what you consider like too boring of a season, where there's one dominating alliance and it's just a pagonging after the merge, and there's no real kind of moving gameplay. It's also not something that is just so chaotic and random, and just no one knows what's going to happen, not even the audience, not even the people who edit the show. Like, I think that there was a good element of strategic maneuverability, alliances that were somewhat shifting, but also some elements of, okay, we know who's aligned with who. We know, this alliance, we know that alliance, like, and also the players. It was interesting. It was, again, you have different personalities, different backgrounds, different dynamics. I think the edit for the show portrayed a lot of people very well rounded, and that was for a while very difficult, a difficult aspect of really learning and not just establishing characters, but just seeing those characters grow throughout the season. So I think this season, to sum it all up, was a good representation of just the good elements of having a fluid game, but not so random that you're just kind of like figuring out, trying to like what is happening. So I think it just gave you the best of all those elements.
For me, I won't go too long into it, but I agree with both of y'all. And I've already talked about my personal negatives with the season, but it's still Survivor, and that's always been my thing. Is no matter what, unless even in the bad seasons, this is not, you can still find something in it, even if it's Thailand. You can find something in it. For me, through 33 seasons, this time around, Millennials versus Gen X is going to be 17th, right in front of Gabon and right behind Panama. Like I said, it wasn't my favorite watch of the season, but this is definitely a season that, even though this is my last time doing the marathon, this is definitely a season that I would rewatch again. It is one of those seasons that is just so overly both emotional, fun, all of that, without ever making me upset or angry, anything like that. I do. So, final two questions. One, who would your ally be this season, Zucker?
Who would my ally be? I mean, logically, I'd be hard pressed not to say Ken, because I feel like he's he's the perfect ally you'd want. Someone who is honest to you, loyal to you, trustworthy. And if I'm not, maybe the strongest challenge person, okay, he's a guy who can win an immunity challenge and kind of be that shield for me. So I'd be hard pressed not to say Ken for those reasons.
Nick?
Ken's a good answer. I don't know. They seem to get pretty frustrated with him. So
get past that. You're good.
I'm gonna go with Jay, who I think is obviously a good hang. He's obviously very loyal to his people, and I think he's gonna get voted out before me because he's just such a big shield. So Jay's gonna be my pick.
Mine is clearly Hannah. If I haven't made it clear, Hannah Shapiro. And then final question, Nick. Something that the modern fandom would not like about Survivor Millennials versus Gen X.
So you told me that question was coming, so I thought about it. And the thing I'm going to focus on is edit related. And something that struck me is, as much as this season gets a reputation as like overly game body, or maybe too much strategy or too many big moves, there's actually very little time, especially compared to like modern Survivor, spent on what I'll call the scramble. So the time between the immunity challenge and the and tribal council. There's some episodes this season where there's like less than 15 minutes on the clock as we're getting back from the immunity challenge. And this was much worse in the early seasons, there'd be like 3 minutes of scramble
they
time.
Would just cut to tribal.
Right. But for a modern like Fiji season, it's remarkable how sometimes like there's a complex strategic thing going on, and we get like 5 minutes summing it up and then off to tribal, which I think really works for this season. But I think that the modern Survivor superfan has gotten so strategy pilled that the scramble is like sacrosanct. It's their favorite time. It's when the game is made. But this season, they're like, no, we're going to give you plenty of beach time early on. And if we got to cut the scramble down to just a few minutes, that's okay. You'll figure it out. So I think that is something that would not hold up so well to the modern Survivor fan.
Zucker?
I wasn't privy to this question, so I'll have to
sorry.
think of my answer on the spot. I guess if the modern Survivor fan is, let's just say, maybe a more casual fan, not as much of a diehard as we are, and they're especially like maybe a COVID Survivor watcher, and they're only kind of knowing the fast-paced new era style game, it's not as drastic, but it's maybe a bit of a slower game for some people, where there's not as many twists or advantages, or just in game inherent things that the players have to deal with. So some maybe modern viewers would find it, I'll say, boring, for lack of a better word. But again, I think that's what makes it interesting. There's a touch of those things, but you let the players play. That's I think the name of the game. That's why I think we love original Survivor, is just because of the game element itself. And then the twists and things that have come, have spiced it up a little bit. But ultimately, the game is the game, and I think that's what we all love about it.
So mine is something that I think all three of us agree on that we all enjoy about this season specifically. So I would be shocked if any of you disagreed with me on what the fans would. So two of the big things that a lot of the modern fandom has said they hate about the new era, as they call it, is it's too kumbaya and there are too many sob stories. Well, Millennials versus Gen X, everyone seems to get along fairly well, even when there are tiffs. You brought up, I mean, Jay and Adam is the biggest example of it. But it's just people out there playing a game together. And this is one of those seasons where, for the most part, everyone still gets along now. Sob stories is the other one because, yes, we get a lot of that. And I feel like people think it's a new thing that just magically appeared in 41, but we've been getting this forever. So going based off of what I know people hate about the post-COVID era, I think they would hate that. I loved it all in this season. I definitely think it added depth to these characters. Nick, what do we have going on the Winners Edit over the summer?
I don't know about over the summer. We're taking things easy right now, but we'll certainly be back for 51 coverage when it comes around. We still have at some point coming up here, we have to do our sort of end of the season debrief to sort of check in on what was the big theme of the season. What did we think of the ultimate edit that our winner, our losing finalist got? So that'll be coming up soon here. But I think we did a lot of lead up to 50 coverage. So I think this summer we're taking a bit of a beat before we come back strong for 51.
All right. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to do this. I know that it's late for, I guess, all of us, but I know it's late, but I appreciate you both staying up with your families and all that. Make sure to subscribe, make sure to, one, thank you to everyone in the chat. Thank you to everyone on Instagram. Thank you to Jake for randomly showing up. It was a fun night. And we will be back tomorrow for Survivor Game Changers.